everyone. I think we should start the studio visit now that we have like some number of participants now, around 20. So thank you for joining us today. So today's studio visit, we are having Mark Jones here, and today we are at the Sarthe Gallery in Montreal to see a solo exhibition that is coming soon, happening in coming Saturday, the 5th of September. And this exhibition is actually a program that the Sarthe is doing, a local residency program. And then we will hear more about it from Mark, and we will know more about like the development of the project, and we will first have a walkthrough of the space. And then later on, we will have a more in-depth discussion about the development of the works or the concept behind the works. So welcome everyone. And just one more reminder again, before we actually start, please remember to mute yourself during the whole process, because we will record it and put it up on our YouTube channel later on. So feel free to drop your question in the chat box, and when we are back to discussion section, we will like answer you shortly. So we will start by going into the space now. So stay tuned. So here we are. We are at the entrance of the gallery, and like Mark will start by an introduction of himself and about this residency project. So
before I introduce myself, I would like to chat a little bit more to this program. Because when her side approached me, they asked me if I could have a studio visit, and my first answer is I don't have a studio at all. Where should we get? But then at the same time, I know that I would be working in this art for a residency program for 4 to 6 weeks. So I just asked, should we do it? And this is how this happened. So it's more like I use this space as my studio for 6 weeks, and then very naturally we come here for the studio visit. So I'm Mark Chung. I am a Hong Kong-based artist. I was raised in Hong Kong, educated in Hong Kong, and I'm working and living in Hong Kong. That's all. That's it. This residency program, I am producing, or I'm producing a body of work, or different, and I'm doing different interventions in the gallery space that's related to the experience of living, like being in Hong Kong in the past 13 months. So it's very related to protests and everything, and now the pandemic and everything. Yeah. So should we start the walkthrough?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We are. Can you see me? Okay. Oh. Now we're in the entrance of the gallery. Usually, this gallery space is a big L-shaped open space with very high ceilings. But I've divided the whole space into two small spaces and one very big gallery space. But you will see that afterwards. But this is the first space you come in. You can see that all the lights are off. There will be a big light installation here next week. But basically, I've turned off all the lights in the gallery, and it's all about the lights that I am adding to the gallery being part of the work, and that's how everyone will see the works. That's the first thing. So this is the room, and when I say that I divided the whole gallery into 3 spaces, I also have changed the whole the climate of the free spaces on there are 3 microclimates. This one is being like the normal indoor climatized room with roughly 20 to 26 Celsius. And I think the relative humidity is around 60 to 70 here. So this is the normal temperature room where you get more or less the normal experience. So when you come into this room, it's an empty room with a very big green wall, a dry wall, with a photo here. The photo is still being printed. This is just a sample. It's going to be even smaller, so it'll be a very, very small photo on a very big wall. This photo was taken, I think, August or September last year in the height of the protest, where everywhere normally when you go from you have to get across the harbor. You have to speak louder. When you get across the harbor, you usually just take a bus or MTR. But last year, during the height of the protest, that became very, very difficult because you get stopped by police when you're on the bus and you trying to go across the MTR, and hence people start to use ferry very, very frequently. It became a very normal way to travel across the harbor last year. And this photo was taken, I think, on a Sunday. Just like we had protest every Sundays, and just one of the Sundays I was in my studio. My studio was in Kwun by then, so I was watching live, and I said, okay, I'll just join the protest, and I just went down took the ferry. And when I was looking at Hong Kong Island, the ferry was from Kwun to North Point, that ferry line. And when I was looking at Hong Kong Island, there was a very heavy fog covering the whole island. So it's like the whole city is being covered in smoke, gas, and it's almost disappearing in thin air. So this is the first work in the whole exhibition. And then you go into a smaller room. You can't see very clearly now, but I've redirected all the cold air from the AC units outside from the bigger room into this smaller room. So it's supposed to be very cold, but now we're still having some issue with the AC unit. Yeah. So this work is should I talk about this work here or later on? Yeah. Maybe I should talk about it outside. Okay, maybe we'll talk about this projection work first here. Yeah. We'll start from here and we'll go out and continue talking about this work and the other AC work. This projection here is it's called. This work is a video. It's a drone footage of the a drone slowly ascending, looking at the ICC when the Symphony of Lights is going off. So you can faintly see it here, but it's, So
what is the Symphony of Lights?
The Symphony of Lights is the light show that happens every day at 8 o'clock. It just happened, and it's there for tourists or just there every day. Yeah. So in Hong Kong last year, everything has changed. We've talked about it a lot. That's we'll talk about it in the development of this exhibition or this residency. Everything has changed. The MTR ride is not the same anymore. When you go on the streets, you have flashbacks of what happened last year. The whole structure, how people interact with their family has changed. everything has changed, and it's just simply a new city. It's different. But what's unchanged and remained constant throughout the whole year was the Symphony of Lights. It's just there every day. At 8 o'clock, there's a horrible light show. It's painful to look at, and it's just there every day. That's the only constant thing in Hong Kong. It's like a very relentless attempt to impose this prosperous image of Hong Kong on the city, while it's just simply not true. Yeah, it's just different, and it's just there every day. And it's only the fireworks has been cancelled last year, and this show has only been cancelled once because of the COVID, but not because of COVID in Hong Kong, because of COVID in Wuhan, and was there as a memory for them. And it's okay. So I have projected this drone footage onto a piece of broken glass. This glass is a laminated tempered glass, so that when you broke one side of it, it still stands up, because the other side is not broken. It still holds the whole piece together.
Right.
So when you project the image onto this glass becomes the screen itself. It becomes a filter, and it becomes a reflector. Coming back to that imposition of this prosperous image of the city, it's the filter. The glass acting as a filter makes the image more mesmerizing in a very strange way, and almost unreal. It makes it even more surreal in these broken patterns on the wall. Yeah, it's a lot more clearer there. And this, as a screen, it shows the image very, very faintly, and it's a very fake image of the whole city and the show. And when you go out, you can actually see the reflection of that. When you look into the reflection, it shows how hollow the whole show is, and how empty this whole spectacle is. And these different layers of the projection and reflection and so on gives very different meanings to the image, where when I try to show that different sides of this show and try to bring down this superficial imposition of this image of Hong Kong. Which is the original idea of the show. And when you come into this room here, this is the biggest space in the gallery now. And you see that all these flexible air ducts.
Yeah.
These are the ducts connected to the AC units on top. And air is being sucked into that small room there. So you have this very imbalanced experience walking through the room. This room, there's no aircon at all. There's no air conditioning, so you only feel the heat, and it's getting more and more. It's getting warmer and warmer throughout the week already, because we had stopped turning on the AC in this space, and it's starting to get a little difficult to breathe, and hopefully it will get even more difficult to breathe when it opens. Yeah, but basically this work is trying to mimic a dysfunction of the whole in the structure of system. These systems are these climatization systems or lighting systems. These are vital in our and these building structures, these building environments. Without these, the building become impossible to stay in. It becomes very, very uncomfortable. But usually we don't feel these systems until there's a problem with the system. So it's more of making a dysfunction or an imbalance of the whole system, and to draw the parallel between these man-made systems and human body systems, where your body don't feel well, and you start to, and this is, there's an imbalance in the body, and that's being metaphorically, it points to the failure of the whole political system in Hong Kong, and somehow. So you can see all these air ducts going from the top, underneath, going into that room where it's supposed to be very, very cold.
Mm-hmm.
So you come out, and it's almost, when you go into an exhibition, you can choose not to see a work. But in this work, you won't be able to choose. You have to experience it because you walk into it. The air is part of the experience of the discomfort of the air in this space is work. And you can't avoid this work. This is another reason why I try to use lights and air in this show. So then we go into other work. This work is called, should I sit down?
Up to you.
It's not necessary to see me in the walkthrough maybe. But this work is called Bókverk, and Bókverk is a condition with the digestive system where the intestine has a twist itself. These pipes are switch lines that you see in old buildings, in the facade of the old buildings, and everywhere in Hong Kong. It's very complicated because there are subdivided units in subdivided flat units in that original unit, so that people mutate these pipe switch line systems, becomes almost like an untied knot, a knot cannot be untied, and it becomes the work itself is a cast of the negative space of the inside of the pipes.
Mm-hmm.
So pipes are basically channels, and what's in the channel is what's being moved around it. But because it's so complicated, the form itself makes the pipe dysfunctional. It's impossible to work properly. So you have all these strange smell in these subdivided units, or if you live in an apartment on top of these units, you smell what are they exactly doing. You know that they just went to the toilet, or you know what are they cooking already, or what are they pouring into the drain.
Yeah.
So basically it's a system that wouldn't work, but it's always there. So again, drawing this parallel between these human organ systems, infrastructural systems in the urban environment, and being metaphorically showing this dysfunctional system in the city.
And this is actually from.
Yeah.
Hello. This is actually from a building here in
Yes.
Hong Kong, right? In Taipei.
This is I saw this in Taipei, and then I was amazed by the complexity of these pipe works, how it really entangled, and and I went up and do an exact measurement of this. So this is an exact replica of the negative form of these pipes, the hollow cavity. And this is, if you pour in, basically I took the measurements, and then I made the pipes the same way, connected the pipe the same way, and then I poured in expanding foam. So pouring in a very material that would expand itself within a cavity. So you have to, there's also another layer of that material where you have to control an expanding force where it goes in the same way. So then we go into the last space. This space is right here. Again, coming back to that idea of not using artificial lights, I will make a hole in this wall here, and then it will be lighting this work here with natural light. This is another piece of those pipes. The reason that I've chosen this area here is because this is, in this very big gallery, this is the only space where it's too dark. Maybe
you can kind of see it.
This. Because this is more, we had this discussion, I had this discussion with Willem where we talked about the use of this space in the gallery, where this space is really the only space in the gallery that we are most familiar with, in the sense that it's small and everything is where it's like our living environment within the whole city. So, yes, I think, is that all? Maybe? Is there anything to add?
I think that's it. Oh, that's, yeah, that's,
These are just, this is just a postcard, but I don't think I'm going to show this, but this is a light show. Moves. These are lenticular image.
lenticular.
Yeah, lenticular, yeah. Okay.
What about the newspaper prints?
These are images of flashlights where we've seen in the protest last year, where, because this is basically, I think this is the first work that I really developed in this whole series, is that the use of, because I've been always fascinated with lights, and during protests, lights were being weaponized, and these weaponized light is basically they use light that is so strong that you don't see anything, because there's this interesting relationship where you need light to see, but when there's so much light you can't see, and this interesting idea brought me to the development of that big work, that Symphony of Lights work there. Yep.
What about the
I think there's one more word about the screen printing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But actually, image is not here, but yeah.
You still show the process.
Yeah.
So what's the concept behind these?
Yeah, this is billboard but this is going to be a screen print of an empty billboard that I found it was still empty 3 days ago, but now the government has put an ad on it. But basically, it's a billboard. It's an empty billboard in a cross harbor tunnel where it's very. You only see it empty when they're changing it overnight, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when they start to change the advertisement. That's when you see the whole billboard empty. But this billboard has been empty for 3 weeks, and it's almost impossible to see in the city, where this billboard only takes up a physical existence, and it doesn't mean anything. It's everything else is a void for this billboard when it's empty. So I was drawn to that, this status of it only taking up a physical existence, where at the same time the whole city is being empty. You see shops that closes at 6 o'clock in possibly Bay or Mongkok, and it's and streets with no one on it. Basically, you don't see that in Hong Kong, but now it's what you see every day. And yeah, this is the last piece that I developed during the residency. Okay.
And that billboard is the most expensive, or one of the most expensive billboards in the city, right?
Yeah.
So it's also pointing to the kind of economic dysfunction.
Yeah. So.
Shall we go back to
Okay. Yes.
the lighting situation, and then we continue with the discussion. Hi everyone. Can you guys see us now? Yeah. So thanks for Mark taking us a tour of the current working in progress development of the project so far. So I was just wondering because you mentioned before when you first submitted for this residency program, things have changed, and then I was wondering during this working process, what has been changed, or how it how the changes happening in the city as well has changed the working the work development for the project. Because most of the work we see in the space really talking back to that functional systemic existence in the city, and we very much understand and relate to what's happening in the city. So it's a very personal kind of intake, I think, partly. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Originally, the proposal was more about making an immersive installation that's imagining how the city will be in the future. So it's more an immersive installation of a dystopian or apocalyptic urban landscape, where it's a lot more expressive, where you punch holes in the wall and things. But in the last 6 or 7 or 8 months, the reality has become 10 times worse than my imagination, and my imagination became almost irrelevant. And what I thought it would be happen in the future happened within a few months already. So it slowly became more analytical of the current situation and more internalized these very strong emotions and experiences of the last 13 years. So you can see that these, not a critique, but it's a result of a very analytical, internalized feeling and experience, where you see these dysfunctional, systematic metaphors and stuff. Yeah. So that's how it changed in that sense.
And I think like in what we can't see now is like at the entrance, suppose there will be some neon lights in store at the entrance, and neon light, this element, this material appear quite often in your previous work as well. So I was just wondering, do you want to touch upon a little bit about this material, and like, is there something that really makes you relate to this material, or why did you choose this material that frequent?
To be exact, this lighting installation in the entrance will be fluorescent tubes. So still excited gas, basically, that illuminates. But why I am drawn to lights is a very old work of me. It started from a very old work of me called Orange. So it's basically a project about my mother, where I would go to visit her grave, and then suddenly I close my eyes and I see, and there was a beam of sunlight on me, and I closed my eyes and I saw the color orange. So that's when I closed my eyes, I saw the color orange. That's how I started to be very, very interested in light. So, but it slowly developed into, I think, there's another point to add, is that how the city celebrates, or how the city how a group of people celebrates really reflects on how
City identity.
Yeah, or no, it's not how people are, how things really are. In Hong Kong, we have these very superficial use of lights. These neon signs everywhere, fireworks, the Symphony of Lights. And in fact, it's Hong Kong. I think I've read a book about the Japanese usage of light. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's basically Japanese usage of light, where they started to use electricity as the main power source of lighting. That changed the aesthetic completely, and there's a very long piece of very long writing about that. But the translation of that book was translated by a Taiwanese, and he has written about where we understand lights. Hong Kong is the brightest Chinese-speaking city in the world. It was written by a Taiwanese, I think, 10 years ago, maybe. And basically, I think that was, and I was thinking, yeah, more or less it's true, because when I go to different places in Asia or Chinese-speaking places, our city is very, very bright, and there's lights everywhere. And there is very strong, strange imposition of this image of prosperous image with the usage of light. And my works have a very, I don't do that all the time, but it's starting to become more and more frequent, where I juxtapose these very mesmerizing lighting and the bleak, sad reality behind these lights. For instance, the Working Tycoon, where you see the rainbow color of the lights.
I can show it to the audience as well.
So right opposite to that, that neon light is an image of the tear gas exploding. So I think maybe we'll show this. Yeah. Yep. The tear gas blowing up, and because of the different hues of the neon being projected on an image, it becomes an animation, and it becomes more or less like a fireworks display. That's an example of this kind of juxtaposition, where it's same here, where I project the reflection of the Symphony of Lights onto a piece of broken glass where it dissects the whole image into different layers, and these different layers represent very different meaning of the same image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And apart from using the lighting, another very key element for this project and on-site here is that you mentioned about using the AC to change different section of the temperature of different section to create this very sensory experience, which people would be able to experience when they come on site. So you mentioned like when we first enter into the second section, it will be really cold. And then once we go through the bigger space, it is like a much hotter and humid kind of situation. So in the past, probably like when you have other work, like creating other work, this sensory experience, it would be difficult to create that, because usually in a normal gallery space or in group shows or things like that, like it's obviously it's not an ideal situation for artwork, but in this like situation, you will be able to create this sensory experience. And I just want to touch base on more about this sensory experience that you would like the audience to experience, because like I'm sure this will give like the audience a very different kind of view towards encountering art. Because usually sometimes when people think about going to a gallery to see art, or even just to like institution, they think about, oh, I'm going to enjoy art, appreciating art. But this kind of experience is more hostile, or is more directly like changing the audience like point of view, or like really making them shocked in a way. So could you like tell us more about, like, is there something that inspired you before about using the senses to change their experience?
I don't know. My works were very, very bulky, where the presence of it itself is very, very strong. And I found, and I slowly, gradually, I think that it became too bulky, and it's not light enough. And in Chinese, it's just gao hanga. I don't know how to say it in English. It's just the lightness. It's not there. It's like I'm doing a lot of things just to say so little. Well, I want to change this aspect of my works, and I start to look into different possibilities. So now it's still, you can still see that the presence of these air ducts coming down from, but actually these are not the work. The work is the temperature and that confrontation of the air. And even in the neon sign, it's the same. People just take image of the neon sign, but where the work is really the wall, the white wall opposite of the neon sign.
The photos where,
or just the light on you. So these intangible qualities, or these intangible things are actually the works, where I make very, very big interventions or very big installations, where I'm just showing something very, very intangible.
It's not about the physical element like that show in the space, but more about the like invisible and intangible sense of it.
Yes. And the other reason is these things are, you won't be able to miss it. When you go into the space, you see the lights, you feel lights. When you go into the space, you feel the air. You have to be in part of that work, and you will be part of that work because there are areas around you and the light is on you. Yeah.
So, like, since you started this residency here using the gallery space as your studio, I know that the gallery is open for public to visit before its opening. So I'm sure there are some other audience who already visited the gallery to see like different like progress of the project. So far, like, have you been able to have some interesting kind of encounter with the audience that you want to share with us?
Not much, but yeah, maybe it's because of COVID. It's not. Yeah, I don't think we have as much visitors. Yeah, but showing your whole working progress to the public is very, very different. Because when you're working in a studio or you're just working in your bedroom, you mess up all the time. And this spontaneous or improvisational aspect of art making is always there. And sometimes the mistake just becomes artwork. Where here, people see that you're making a mistake, and a mistake is a mistake when they witness it. And it wouldn't become an artwork, or it changes how you really develop things throughout the whole process. So that's very different from me.
But still, like, I wouldn't count it as a mistake. Like, it's still a work in progress. So I think like it's more about like when you like continues to develop the work and when you continues to like trial and error, like there are things that you would change in the process. So like I was just like curious about like if there's anything that really significantly changed like since you started.
The air ducts.
The air ducts.
Yeah. Originally I was going to use these are flexible air ducts that I'm using now. But originally I was thinking about using these modular air ducts that comes down from the ceiling, that connects to the air column, come down from the ceiling, underneath the floor, go into the small room.
So you want to hidden it under the floor.
Like with very big columns, rigid columns, metal columns coming down from the ceiling. But that's changed very quickly when I saw these flexible air ducts available in the market, where there's a feeling of impermanence in this material, where it's not a module, it's less planned out, it's more messy in a way, and there's a very strange resemblance of these air ducts and intestines in a lot of ways, where I would like to have a parallel with. So I think this is the biggest change in the progress.
And I was wondering, like, I remember there was like a little story behind the projection when you are like doing because of the Symphony of Lights, you're investigating into like how you're going to be able to capture like the lighting and the LED kind of situation of the buildings. And then you realize that actually it changes every day. And then it makes you have to change your plan as well.
Yes.
So initially, like, what was the idea?
Initially, it was the use of very strong LED lights and very strong lasers throughout protest by the police or the protesters, whatever. Just the idea of the light is so strong that it really blinds you for a few seconds and you don't see anything. That was a very, very interesting, it was a very strong idea to me. It's a very strange concept. And I was trying to work on that, and I was finding these lasers in the city. So the first thing that I found is the Symphony of Lights. They use lasers every night at 8 o'clock. And I just went to the harbor and I started looking at these lights. And then original idea was to use a drone, go up, and then let the laser go, let the camera point towards the laser, and then the laser will eventually damage the sensor of the camera, and then it just blinds the camera, and the drone has to come back. The process of you repeatedly expose the sensor to a very strong light until it's damaged. That process becomes the work. But when I started shooting, I found out the Symphony of Lights is different every night. It's not synchronized. I don't know why. I tried calling the office, the hotline. I called them a week during working hours. No one was answering my phone calls, and it's just. And I was thinking, well, what could I see? I was just looking through the images, and I saw that because my friend, he was a drone operator, and it's his habit just to start recording when he takes off. And I was just looking at the reflected image of the city when the Symphony of Lights is going off. And that became there's a surreal quality to this image where it's happening every night, but it's, yeah.
Given the current situation of like, especially the pandemic, I doubt like how many visitors are coming in to see like the Symphony of Lights, but at the same time, it still go on as usual every night. So the kind of like emptiness of the show, like the purpose of it, is like changes. Because
it's such a horrible show. You don't go to the harborfront and see the show. You see it by accident. You see, oh shit. It's you see it and it's an accident, and you don't want it to happen. That's how you see it, through a reflection or in the corner of your eye when you're protesting, when you're walking on the streets. That's how you see it. And the reflection reminds me so much of that, and the fact that this light show is really the most constant thing in the last year. It's happening every night. That's how I started to do work on the Symphony of Lights itself instead of finding pictures.
Sure. So we have touched upon like how the pandemic had like impacts on one of like the work that we just mentioned. So has there been other impacts because of the pandemic, like to maybe your daily life or your creative process, or even for the project itself?
In the beginning, it was more, in the beginning, I was just staying at home because it was just home office, and I had more time to think about what I'm doing, create. But not really, things have not really changed. The government wants you to think that it's dangerous and everything, but it's dangerous, but they are not trying to solve the problem anyway. They're just trying to use this as a tool to do what they want to do. So how it impacted me, really no difference. But buying material has been a lot more difficult. For example, originally that height work, I wanted to make it out of marble or stone, but I just can't, because when I had to order stone from China, it was the height of the pandemic in China, so they weren't able to give me to sell anything to me, so that was difficult. But I don't think it's the same now. Everything is just back to normal. The government is trying to make it not normal. Scheduling has been very, very difficult. I think we had delayed and delayed and delayed. But that's to my advantage, so I have more time. But everything else, but nothing really changed my creative process of production.
So shall we open up this to our audience as well, like to see if they have any questions? So everyone, feel free to jump in. You can unmute yourself and join us and ask your question, or feel free to drop a line in the chat room, and then I'll ask on behalf of you. while kind of we are waiting for some of the responses from the audience, let me follow up with one more question first. I was just wondering, like, when you were doing the mold making for the pipes that you saw outside the subdivided flats, you mentioned you were going to use marble before, but now you have changed the material because of the impact of the pandemic. The material that you're using now, it seems that, is it like a material that you have used before? Like,
No.
Is it a new material that you're
To
trying
me, it's a new material. Originally it was marble, then I was trying to cast it in aluminum, but it was that became impossible because I had to go to mainland, and I couldn't because I had to quarantine for 40 days.
Yeah.
I don't have a working visa. I would just lose a month back and forth for the production of that work. But that was basically impossible for me back then. So, and then I slowly developed into casting the work myself. And casting this complicated form, this negative form in the pipes, it's impossible with every other, it's almost impossible with any other materials. But expanding foam, it expands itself. So when you pour it in, it just goes to all the
space inside the pipe.
Based on the expansion rates. So you just have to do the calculation, add a little bit more, so it just goes through all the pipes itself. So that adds to the work too, I think, the material, because it expands itself, so and it's a controlling of this almost uncontrollable force of the material itself. That adds a little bit to the work too. But this is a new material to me, yes. And this material, it's different from what you use where you spraying expanding foam. It's a little bit different because you have to mix it yourself and you pour it into the mold, where it's higher in density and it's a lot harder, and you can polish and everything. And it's usually used in prop making. That adds a little bit more to it. This whole exhibition, I treated more or less like a movie set. And it's people, the audience are actors walking through the set. But that's a meaning to me. I don't think it really adds a lot to the exhibition, but it's
Sure. So we have a question from Allison. So why were the lights at the beginning so yellow? So just a reminder, sorry, maybe we haven't clarified in the beginning. So this is a work in progress kind of situation. The mark will finish in the coming week, and it will officially open on the 5th of September. So currently, suppose there were some neon lights, neon tubes.
Yes,
Going to be installed at the entrance. The yellow lighting was just the current lighting for the current situation, but it's not going to be part of the show. So
I think the entrance, the yellow light is part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
These are the fluorescent tubes that I'm using, but it's too bright now, and I have to dim it a little bit. The reason I use this yellow hue is that it's supposed to be a very warm hue, where it's comfortable, it's comforting, where I use a very cheap version of these tubes, where the color rendering index is very low. So you see colors because of your brain, only because of the brain. It's imposing colors on what you see.
It's like your perception.
Yes. So the brain works in a very strange way. You only have to see very little colors, but you see a lot more. But this limits a lot of the perception with that's very technical, but it gives out a very uncomfortable feeling with yellow light, with this low color rendering index. It gives you a very claustrophobic feeling. This is, and it's throughout the space.
And we have a question from Andre. How do you balance image making and your sculpture practice?
I think Andre is asking a question that he knows the answer. But yeah,
yeah, because like at the beginning of your career, I think you are more focusing on like image making than like making sculptures or like installation, or
yes,
it's more focused on photography or like video works. And now it's kind of slowly evolving to
I would
installation.
say mainly video installation in the early after graduation. That's what I did, video installation. But with this practice is very, very difficult because it's you won't be able to realize your work, to actualize your work until you have an exhibition. So you always have a lot of ideas, but you won't be able to actualize it. So it becomes very, very painful where you have all these ideas and it's just there, it's just on paper, it's in your brain. You're not able to see it. That's why I started to make sculptures in some way, where I can continue to work on things while I'm not being able to actualize these installation in my brain or on paper, these ideas. So this is how I don't know. It's a balance. I wouldn't say it's a balance. It's how it really gradually developed into this kind of mixture of practice. Yes. It's more for my mental health. Yes,
But the interesting thing is like in the space, the project itself, you're trying to make the intangible or invisible element more visualized, not visualizing them, but make it more prominent, like more present. But at the same time, like you have these sculpture form, or you're trying to move towards more like sculpture making or object based. So like I think it goes back to that like question again, that like maybe it's a balance that like you're trying out different things and then you're just exploring the materials and
yes.
and the senses that it could convey or like give to the audience when they experience.
Going back to that idea of a movie set, these sculptures are like different props that the actor could position in that set. So it's more about making an immersive experience, and these sculptures are really stamps that takes up the physical space in the whole exhibition. And these stamps or these physical presence of these works are important because it really changes how you interact in the space, how you move in the space. So it's not just the sculptures are work in itself, but it's also an element of the whole installation which changes the perception of space and so on.
Sure. So a question from T-Learn. How was it for you working in a large-scale immersive site as a standalone work?
Exciting. It's just exciting. It's the first time that I'm really able to do. I have the whole space to myself and do what I want to. So let's see how it goes. I don't know. Until now, it's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Because at some point, I will really have to rely on myself. Because sometimes when I'm showing with other people, I'm still doing very big installation, I can rely on how art works in the space. But now it's, for a narrative, the whole thing. But now I will have to create the whole narrative myself. That's very challenging.
You have to make the whole storyline or like your idea of the work more complete in a way when you are like taking up the whole
in group
space.
shows, it's more like I don't know. Ask the curator. Don't ask me. That's that's how it is. But yeah.
It's their job to create the connection, and then you just have your story, and then leave it to them to make the connection.
Yes.
So from Andre, how do you let your audience going into your images? For example, your images is always presenting a complete idea, while your installation is more immersive. So there is an exclusion or not inviting elements in your image making.
Wow. That's a very complex question, is it? Yeah. Wow. 用廣東話講問得唔得㗎，大佬？呢咁深嘅嘢。Your image is always presenting a complete idea of your installation. I think I do that intentionally, where I want the image to be confronting. Yeah. Or the whole experience to be confrontational in a lot of ways. So, like going back to that idea where I say that I'm making very, very big intervention or installation in the space, while the work is in fact very small, it's air or just light on the wall. And what is interesting is people always take selfies in front of the neon sign. They never look at the walls. So that's a very, I don't know if that's successful or it's a failure. It's just I wanted the
maybe
wall
you're
to
playing
be,
around with that idea as well to attract audience.
That would be a very, very irresponsible answer. I was playing with your audience. No, I was not. But that's a very good question. Great, actually. I wanted all the installations to be very confrontational, but at the end, people just take selfies in front of the works.
But as you mentioned before as well, for example, at Taipei, when two of the works are like facing parallel to each other, actually some people just ignore completely the crippling light, which is like, I think, have a more kind of in-depth meaning or confrontational to the audience in terms of like reflecting what's happening in Hong Kong. And as you mentioned, also people might just realize about the whole like changing colors of the sweet lighting and didn't realize about like the relationship in between the two works.
It's easy to make the that crippling light, the print a lot bigger and make it noticeable. But the work becomes a lot weaker to me, maybe. I was thinking of repeating the image to make a very strong presence, a very overwhelming experience walking into that room. But intentionally, it just became a small image on the wall. That was most natural to me because the smaller the image is, the stronger it is. It needs that white wall around it to have that presence of the image. Otherwise, it would just be another spectacle in the whole wall, which would just be a big fireworks going on. And that's not what I wanted, at least for that work. And for this work, it becomes, yes, it's very confrontational because you are blocking the light, you're blocking what you are seeing when you're trying to see that image. And I don't know, it's just how I felt it should be, or how I felt the image should be presented. I felt that this is the strongest way of showing the image. But yeah.
Do we have any other question? So I think it's almost time now, and we're very happy to have Mark like leading us walk around the space, and we're very much looking forward to the opening of the space and see the final like work itself. And hopefully you guys will be able to make it when the space open, or feel free to drop by anytime because it's still open during the work in progress situation.
Tuesday to Saturday.
Tuesday to Saturday.
11 to 7.
11 to 7.
Yes.
So thank you, Mark, for joining us today. And I look forward to see the final product, and hopefully, sorry, one more thing. There is a special performance or like project for
on the closing day, Samson
Chung?
Chung, yes. Samson Chung. There's so many Samson. Samson Chung will be performing in the space, so he'll be making more interventions upon my intervention in the gallery. I think that's the 20th.
That's the 19th.
19th, yes. So there will be
at 6:30.
6:30, yeah. 19th, 6:30. There will be a performance by Samson there.
Cool. So look forward to it, and hopefully you will be able to finish everything before the opening. And thanks for everyone to join us today. So the recording will be on YouTube. In case you just joined at halfway, feel free to check it out again. And we will have another studio visit in the coming Wednesday with another artist. So continue to follow our work, and thank you for being with us today. And thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.